In this video, we will discuss the Internet of Things relative to security. We will define an IoT device or a thing as an internet-connected computing device that has a focused functionality, meaning it's not there for you to walk up and use to do general computing tasks. It controls something like your heart. It monitors something, perhaps the weather or your doorbell. It provides entertainment, the video screen at the gas pump that shows you CNN while you're filling up your gas tank. It generally has a very limited operating system. Since it has no need to interact with humans, it probably does not have a mouse interface. It probably does not have USB ports unless they're necessary. It probably does not have an extensive video card, if it even has a video display. While it is a computing device, then, they've cut down on costs by taking out all the things that it doesn't need. Some examples of IoT devices: your doorbell camera, a weather station you might put in your backyard so the squirrels can chew it up, implantable medical devices that can be controlled remotely using an iPad or a specialized tablet, and even a water meter that can tell the water company how much water you've used without them having to drive by and read your meter. All great conveniences, all things that theoretically make our lives easier. But are they vulnerable? Are there ways they can be hacked? Well, yes, because they're made by humans, so there will be times when there are security concerns. Here's a rather dramatic security concern. I would be very interested in knowing if I had a pacemaker that was potentially vulnerable to hacking. That would scare me quite a bit. I think the benefits of such a device probably outweigh the security concerns in the long run, but it's certainly something I would want fixed as soon as possible. We talk about vulnerabilities in desktop computers, not laptop computers. We also talk about vulnerabilities relative to IoT devices. IoT devices can be vulnerable perhaps for different reasons. In some cases, they may be rushed to market. There are races to get the most technically adept refrigerator or the fanciest toaster or the most up-to-date coffee maker that can order its own filters from Starbucks. If it runs low, and in that rush to market, security concerns may not be at the fore. These IoT devices are built on a limited hardware and software platform. A lot of times they're built using open source, free system software that may have known vulnerabilities right out of the box. So that creates a risk. These devices are very often built according to cost rather than reliability or security. Because I'm building 1 million Ring doorbells, and again, I'm not picking on Ring doorbells, because I built 1 million doorbell cameras, let's put it that way, I'm looking to save every penny I can possibly save to keep production costs down. And for that reason, I may not spend as much time on security, on testing, on software that I've put through the ringer in order to save a couple of pennies here and there. They're attractive targets to hackers because it's a pretty safe bet that your refrigerator does not have an antivirus program installed on it. When you bring your refrigerator home and you plug it in, and it tells you you need more milk, it does not tell you if it's been infected with a virus or a worm. I haven't seen a version of Norton or McAfee that includes your refrigerator. They may sell you a version for your laptop or your desktop, but they haven't expressed a lot of concern about your toaster to this point. There's a lot of them out there. That makes them an attractive target. One of the reasons Linux computers are not as vulnerable or considered not as vulnerable to attack is because there aren't that many as there are Windows machines, and a hacker is going to spend their time where they can get the highest bang for the buck. Therefore, they're going to attack machines that they can easily find. So they're going to attack IoT devices they can easily find. Another reason an IoT device is an attractive target is no one is paying attention to it once it's installed. When you install your weather station in the backyard, as long as it tells you the temperature and the wind speed and direction and whether or not it's been chewed up by a squirrel, you don't care if it's been hacked. So no one is paying attention. That makes it an attractive target for a hacker. One type of attack that we hear about quite often is a distributed denial of service. And the IoT devices have become notorious for participating in this kind of attack. The concept is simple. A host on the network, a web server, a database server, or even a security server, is flooded with requests for information. And there are easy ways to do that. And when that flood happens, the network bogs down, that server bogs down, and it cannot handle legitimate requests. And therefore, that becomes a denial of service to all the people who legitimately want to use that server. That's a way to bring down a website or conceivably an entire company. IoT devices have been harnessed into botnets by installing malicious software on those devices and then remotely controlling them and coordinating them to create this flood of network traffic that builds into a denial of service attack. Your weather station in the backyard may be half eaten by a squirrel, but it may still be committing an attack in a coordinated denial of service attack controlled by someone on the other side of the planet across the internet. Risk versus reward is always a consideration in computing. And I've listed some here facetiously just to make a silly point. We can, on the positive side, program our coffee maker with our phone. We can sit on the couch, watch American Idol, and program the coffee maker to wake up the next morning and brew us a pot of coffee. If I use the terms wrong, I apologize. I don't drink coffee. That's a pro. That's an advantage. A disadvantage is the coffee maker can become part of a botnet after it's been hacked and can participate in a distributed denial of service attack. And one particularly interesting DDoS was an attack on the SeaWorld website. I provided a link here if you'd like to read more about it, and you can easily find some podcasts that tell the story in greater detail. And I don't honestly know what types of devices participated in this botnet attack. I know that the hacker, for lack of a better term, who instigated the attack used someone else's botnet that had been created for this kind of purpose. And then part of the story is that this gentleman started the attack on the SeaWorld website, only meant for it to run for a short period just to make a point. His point was, by the way, that SeaWorld was mean to animals. And instead of turning it off, he fell asleep and it ran for a couple days and actually took the SeaWorld site down for an extended period of time, costing them a lot of money. Another pro, and again, I'm being facetious here to make a point, you can control your centrifuges over the network, and that is a reference to centrifuges that are making nuclear fissionable material for nuclear weapons or other purposes. Centrifuges are required to make that material. However, one of the more famous and yet unsolved attacks, referred to as Stuxnet, caused the centrifuges owned by a foreign country to spin too quickly and destroy themselves. And allegedly that hack was performed against that IoT device, the centrifuge, by another nation, another actor. And again, it still hasn't been definitively proven who did that. There's a lot of theories about who committed that hack. But again, I encourage you to read about that because it's another very interesting story in the field of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is way more interesting than software development or networking or Internet of Things. As far as cloak and dagger stories go, there's a lot more entertainment to be gained by reading these research papers and these documentaries. And as we've said before, there are interesting things you can do with an IoT device. If it makes your life better and you'd like to buy a coffee maker with a user interface that runs through your phone so you can program it from the couch, that's terrific. Go for it. Are you at risk? Could a Russian hacker break into your IoT device, cause your coffee maker to come on in the middle of the night and set fire to your house? Absolutely. Is that something you should be concerned about? That is a decision you have to make. Another example, this is a well-known security website called Krebs on Security, which experienced a botnet attack, costing the owner of the site quite a bit of money. I don't know the exact nature of the bots that were involved in this DDoS, but it's a safe bet that some of them were probably IoT devices. Data is gathered in tremendous amounts by IoT devices. Think about your Fitbit. Think about your Apple Watch. Your heart rate, your number of steps, when you were moving, where you were when you were moving. Huge volumes of information is transmitted by your IoT device in little dribs and drabs across the internet to hungry servers. And one of the concerns about all that data that is transmitted by these devices is whether or not it says something specific about you. And to prevent that data from saying something specific about you, we have coined the term de-identified data, or also anonymized data. And here's an example published by a reputable hospital, Johns Hopkins, who has come up with a standard or a definition for de-identified data. So they have gone to great lengths to define what data is acceptable to use if it has removed all indications of specific people from that database. So rest assured that we are doing our best. The people in the IT field have defined things to protect you. Will this always happen? Absolutely not. Every database is susceptible to hacking. Every piece of data on the internet is insecure. But we are making an effort to standardize ways to anonymize all of this data that is collected from these IoT devices. Fitbits, even though the data is de-identified, we can still glean some interesting information from this IoT device. We can gather heart rate data from millions of users across millions of events and analyze that data and possibly come up with some interesting results. Therefore, even though it's de-identified, even though it doesn't point back to you specifically anymore, we as a group can get some useful data from that de-identified information. Is your Fitbit vulnerable? That little thing you wear on your wrist that tells you your heart rate, that tells you the number of steps. I have one. I love it. I wear it almost all the time except when I'm sleeping. There are some places on the internet that claim it's vulnerable. In this particular article I've cited here, the Fitbit manufacturer doesn't agree with the findings of the hackers, so to speak. Is this of concern to you? What could a hacker do to your Fitbit? I don't know. Could they make it catch on fire? Probably not. Could they lock it onto your wrist? Probably not. But they could probably hack into it and steal the information from it. At least this article claims that they can. The data has value, and you can see I've tried to indicate that somebody else besides us thinks the data has value because Google bought Fitbit. Google is not a hardware company. Google bought Fitbit, in my opinion, for the access to all of that data being generated by all of those users on all of those IoT devices. Where is that data going? Onto Google servers? Is it vulnerable? Well, we need someone to protect it. That could be you. That brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much.